This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world, West Alabama. How are you doing today on this hump day? Hope you're all having a happy hump day. You're watching the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube. Hopefully you're watching us on the Bama Central YouTube channel. There's a lot of great content going up right now about the Bama Central YouTube channel. You can see Patrick Murphy and the ladies handling their College World Series press conference. And you can see a little practice. We're going to get into the Women's College World Series today with our friend Katie Windham. You can follow her. You probably are following her on the Twitter machine at Katie Windham _. We appreciate everybody who's jumped in, subscribed, rated, and reviewed the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We're basically going to go out to Oklahoma today and find out what in the world got into these ladies to get them to the College World Series. And to do that, we thank our friend and expert, Katie Windham, has traveled from Alabama to Oklahoma City for the second year in a row. How many times is this for you, Katie, out there in Oklahoma City? Thanks so much for your time. I know it's been a very busy day for you.
This is my third time to Oklahoma City. Started covering softball in 2021. So made it 3 out of the 4 years that Alabama's been out here. 2022 is the only year they didn't make it. It's kind of funny that I've been telling people, I've kind of since that first year covering softball, I've kind of blocked off the first week of June in my calendar of just the potential of coming out here. And I didn't necessarily think that was going to happen this year until the last couple of weeks. But we're going to get into it, but kind of what we saw in regionals and obviously in supers last week. Here Alabama is back in Oklahoma City for the 15th time.
Absolutely. And Katie, you did get a shout out today from Coach Murphy. He opened his press conference basically saying, how many of y'all expected us to be here? And Katie Windham maybe being the only one. And so nice to get a little credit from the coach for your consistency and dedication covering the program. How did they get out there? I mean, they went 14 innings against LSU and really in the SEC tournament, and not really a good performance. One and done in the SEC tournament. And I think that a lot of the detractors or doubters were getting quite loud leading into the regionals, but Alabama softball just scratches claws, finds a way to win the regional, go into Knoxville, and really might have should have won the first 2 games, but didn't, and then won the second the game 2 and 3 to get to Oklahoma City.
Yeah, it was interesting. Earlier in the press box, I was talking to Oklahoma softball's SID, and it's his first year on the job, and so he was kind of asking me what happened in Alabama Super Regional last weekend because he hadn't gotten to watch it, and how I think matchup-wise, looking at Alabama versus Tennessee, obviously they'd already played this year in Alabama, won one of those games, but it was not a great series for Alabama. They scored 1 run the whole series, and they've struggled to hit good pitching. They've struggled to hit any pitching, honestly, for the last 2 months of the season. And Tennessee has 2 of the best pitchers in the country, probably the best 1-2 pitch, and Carlin Pickens and Peyton Gottschall. And I think the key really in that series was that Alabama was able to score in the first inning of all 3 games, and obviously in Game 3 to Grand Slam, the first inning was the only time they scored, and it was all they needed because of how good the pitching was. And we've seen all year long how good this pitching is with Caleb Beaver and Jocelyn Brisky, and they just haven't gotten the run support. Alabama put it together in supers, and Patrick Murphy, he was asked today because I was the only person from the Alabama beat there today. I think I know a couple more are coming out for the game tomorrow, but so it's mostly national softball writers down there, or people that cover Oklahoma, things like that. And somebody asked him, what changed with the offense? And he said, his assistants kind of came to him and said, what we're doing isn't working. We've got to change things up. And so they went back to more of the small ball, the slapping, putting the ball in play. And that's what we saw this weekend. And even from that first inning against Tennessee, even though it was the game they lost, Alabama put a lot of pressure on the Tennessee defense, and it worked out. And then Alabama's pitchers just kept Tennessee's offense off balance the whole series, and you could tell how frustrated Karen Weekly was in her in-game interviews, and she even changed her lineup up in Game 3, put some new people in there, moved people around, and they still just weren't able to hit the Alabama pitching. And so the pitching's been there all year. It's been the offense that has not, and it's finally kind of coming around, and obviously coming around at a good time.
Patrick Murphy been involved with Alabama softball for 2 decades now, basically. I think it's very commendable, and I get your opinion on to say, okay, I've been doing this for a long time. We've been to 14 at the time, 14 College World Series. Now they're at their 15th. We've been doing it a long time. I know what works, what doesn't. To receive the reception from the coaching staff, I mean, Caleb Breaux has not ever been a college coach before. Right. She's been an expert on ESPN and obviously was a great player at Alabama. But to receive, okay, the coaching or feedback from his assistants and say, okay, yeah, you guys are probably right. We need to change some things up here offensively or strategically. What does that tell you about the man that he is and just the coach that he is?
Yeah, he's obviously open to changes. He's open to criticism. I think there's been a lot of criticism online of this team. And I think also, if you know Murphy or followed his career, there may be no one that's been harder on himself than him. Like if you listen to what they said after they won in regionals, that it's been a really up and down year with a lot of downs. They're not used to losing this much. They only won one SEC series. They finished below 500 in SEC play. That's not the standard of this program. That's not what they're used to. And so, I think he was hard on himself. I think he was frustrated. You could tell a lot of times, obviously, in post games this year, that he's frustrated, and it gets to a point where there's only so much you can ask. And I think I talked about this when I was on your show before regionals, that it's like when you get shut out again or only score one run, it's like, what do you ask after the game? And you've already asked, what do you need to do to fix the offense? And then it's just not happening. So, while the game around the country has switched a lot to power, knocking it out of the park, that's not necessarily this team's strong suit. There are people that can hit home runs. And I talked about that a little bit in the practice report today, that Riley Valentine looked like she was still swinging it well. There's a couple players hitting bombs in the park here. And there's been some players on this team that have had, big home runs in Oklahoma City before, but that's not necessarily their game. It is the game of UCLA who they'll be facing tomorrow. But, I just think it shows that he's always open to learn. And, this, though, is a really unusual spot for this team to be in, that, yes, they've made Oklahoma City 15 times, but this is only the second time they've made it as the lower seeded team in a super regional. Like you said, I can't remember if you said this before after we went live, but they're the lowest team left here. And they've made Oklahoma City a lot, but it's when they've been a top 8 seed because they put themselves in the position during the regular season. And that just wasn't the case this year. But they've still found their way here. And I think it's just a testament to his growth as a coach.
All right, so I have been to just a couple of availabilities this year, just sporadically, and basically filling in for when you need me because you've been all over it, and I appreciate it. But the late part of the year, the attitude has I won't say doesn't care because that's not the case, has been more carefree, has been, okay, we're just out here to play softball, have fun, do our best. And that doesn't always really line up with excellence sometimes at high-level sports, but it's really paid off for this team. Okay, we're going up to Knoxville, we're the underdog, we're embracing it, we're just going to roll the ball out and see how well we play. Has it been as simple as a mindset change of, it's not, it's just sports, it's not that big of a deal, we're just going to do our best? Or is there something else going on with this team that's kind of enabled them or infused them with belief that, we can compete, we can win, and really acquit ourselves well against the best of the best?
Yeah, I don't fully know because I don't know if there's a mindset shift. It does seem like Murph talked about today that he had, or not today, he talked yesterday at the airport about how he had Haley McClenny and Nate Oates call the team before the Knoxville Super Regional, and just how this team has kind of mirrored what basketball had this year, where they had some rough stretches but ended up in the Final Four, and that's kind of how the softball team has been. Because you're right, it did seem at times this year like that if you have a competitive nature and you hate losing, that you maybe wouldn't lose as much as they did. But then also, obviously, softball's a tough game. The SEC's tough, and so it's hard to fully know. But yeah, I think we've seen the dugout props. This team loosening up a little bit, which Edwin had a story about that this morning, and just. Murph said this morning or earlier today in the press conference that this is a really good team, like chemistry wise. And so I think that always helps. It's also a senior heavy team. Off the top of my head, I can't remember how many there are because it's kind of wonky with the 5th-year seniors and the regular seniors and the transfers and all that stuff. But it's upperclassmen heavy. And I think a lot of these girls wanted the chance to finish their careers at the Women's College World Series. And I think once you get into postseason, it is that do or die moment, or at least the NCAA tournament postseason, because we also saw in the SEC tournament that was their first 14-inning game, and they did not come out on top in that one.
All right, so the palm tree yesterday at the palm tree inflatable got a lot of love yesterday at the Tuscaloosa Regional Airport. I asked, "What's your favorite prop?" And both Caleb Beaver and Kinley Cahalan identified the palm tree. Now Patrick Murphy said, "Oh, I like the sunglasses that they put on the palm tree." What's your favorite prop that you like?
I don't know. I feel like did they have I feel like was there an inflatable guitar in there last weekend?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I always like that.
Air guitar.
The palm tree is decorative. I don't really know if it fits the vibe of Knoxville, Tennessee, or Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, but maybe it can bring those vibes here, which actually today, it's a very pleasant day outside here, which I've been here when it's just been scorching hot before. But there's also pretty much always a little bit of threat of inclement weather here in this part of the country, and which can lead to rain delays and stuff. But yeah, I think the props are something that's fun. I like the guitar, I guess.
Make sure you're reading Edwin Stanton. He put up a piece right there on BamaCentral.com about the props and how the ladies have really embraced kind of the fun nature of softball. I mean, look, it is just sports. We all want to see our teams win at a high level, but it's not that big of a deal. It's just sports. So I think it's maybe helped create a shift. They say that they are enhancing. They said at the airport, we're bringing more props to Oklahoma City. So you're going to have to watch at 11 a.m. tomorrow on ESPN, or follow it on BamaCentral.com. Katie Windham will have live updates, and we'll be putting some supplemental coverage around the game tomorrow. So it's going to be a lot of fun. A big matchup with UCLA. UCLA kind of smacked Georgia around in the Super Regional. What's the formula? Is it more just pitch your tail off and try to scrape a couple of runs, or how do you feel, or what's your sense on the matchup against UCLA tomorrow at 11 a.m.?
Yeah, it was interesting. Whenever I do the how to watches for the softball series, I look at the stats for both teams. Just at the end, I'll do like the leaders in different categories, like batting average, home runs, RBI, stuff like that. And when I was looking at UCLA stats yesterday, pitching wise, it's some of the worst of the ones. Like, there's not really like an ace with ace type numbers that we usually kind of see in the SEC, but their ace, it's really just because they struggled a little bit at the beginning of the season, had some tough losses, but finished really strong. And so their ace, her name's slipping my mind right now, but she had an ERA over 3, I believe, but only had 1 loss on the season. Her record was like 20-1. So I think the key tomorrow is going to be, I think they do have gettable pitchers. Can Alabama continue that small ball? Can somebody time up a home run well for Alabama and get that key hit? And then also pitching wise, Maya Brady is really strong at the plate for them, leads them in average, is hitting over 400. I think she has like 18 RBIs. They also have a hitter with 18 home runs, not RBIs. She had a lot of RBIs, like 60 something. And so they have some really potent hitters in their lineup. I think they had like 7 people hitting above 300, which is, not what Alabama has been this year. And so it's a tough lineup, but I think the key is going to be limiting Maya Brady. And then I think Alabama's pitchers are good enough to kind of pitch to the rest. And, it's going to be interesting to me to see who starts tomorrow in the circle for Alabama, because we've seen both Beaver and Brisky be really good in the postseason and gain some really good postseason experience. And obviously Beaver's been the ace for most of the year, but, Sunday in the winner-take-all game, in the winner-go-home game, in the spot on OKC on the line game, he started Jocelyn Brisky. So obviously Murph has a lot of confidence in her, and it's well-deserved because she's pitched really well as of late and really for most of the season.
How about Caitlin Terry, 21-1 overall for UCLA? So I think that's the name you were looking for. She got a 3.04 ERA, but a great record, 21-1, 16 complete games, 151 strikeouts on the season. She's only allowing batters 231 average, so pretty good in the circle for UCLA. You hit on the pitchers, and Patrick Murphy started right there with his press conference. He said it's fast pitch softball, and basically credited Jocelyn Brisky and Caleb Beaver. We talked about it the last time you were on the show, maybe 2 weeks ago. replacing Montana Fouts was always going to be the question. And I want to contrast this with kind of the online narrative that the game has passed Patrick Murphy by. You replace Montana Fouts with two pitchers who are brand new to the program. You just hit on it. Caleb Beaver from Central Arkansas had a really strong year at a little bit lower level, and Jocelyn Brisky, a true freshman. I'm just impressed, honestly, and so the makeup of both of them. I mean, Brisky looks like an absolute child in front of the camera, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that impressively for her maturity. And then Beaver talked about watching the no hitter a couple years ago against UCLA in the Women's College World Series, and came from a lower level. Said, "Oh, I wanted to play at Alabama." Just Patrick Murphy's ability to, it seems like, continue to adjust. How important have these pitchers been? And really, did one of them have surgery this year?
Yeah, he said that after the Knoxville Super Regional. I think after Game 3, he said that Beaver had surgery at some point this season, which I didn't know that. And which Murph is normally pretty hush-hush about injuries, doesn't really like talking about them. If I ask, normally get pretty limited, concise answers about that. So, and then today there just wasn't really an opportunity to follow up because there's so many national reporters in there. But yeah, I think pitching wise, a lot of credit's due to Lance McMahon, the pitching coach, because obviously Stephanie Van Berkel-Perthrow was there for a really long time. She leaves before last season for head coaching job at Memphis. Lance comes in for Montana's last year, and that's a tough situation. Montana's one of the most decorated players in college softball history, one of the most well-liked, a fan favorite, a really good pitcher, obviously, since she was young. And so for him to come in and, adjust with her right away and earn her trust and respect, and what he was able to do with her last year and really improve her numbers from her fourth year to her fifth year. And then this year, replacing Montana Fouts, and like you said, what he's been able to do with two new pitchers in Caleb Beaver and Jocelyn Brisky, and even Murph, I think, credited Lance a lot yesterday at the airport and his media availability. And so, but as far as to kind of, talking about Murph adjusting and if the game's passing by, one of the other complaints I've seen kind of is that, like, he doesn't utilize the transfer portal. But even though she was from a smaller school, Caleb Beaver was one of the, top pitching prospects in the portal, obviously, and it's paid off for how well she's performed for Alabama this year and becoming the ace for the Crimson Tide. And I also thought it was interesting today when I asked her about watching that 2021 perfect game for Montana. I think maybe before the season started, some of us had asked Kayla about the prospect kind of stepping into Montana's shoes, or how do you replace that, but we really haven't talked about it that much during the season. And so I just found it really interesting, kind of her talking about how she's had to step into that role this year of, you're coming in behind Montana, but you also got to be your own person and do your own thing. And she's definitely been able to do that this year.
All right, so after beating Tennessee, number 4 national seed in the whole NCAA tournament, you look at it, we've hit on it about 5 minutes ago. Alabama is the lowest seed remaining. You look through the schedule, you got 6 seed UCLA, 10 seed Duke, 2 seed Oklahoma, Stanford is an 8, 1 seed Texas, Oklahoma State is a 5, and Florida is a 4. I hate to be so blunt, but I mean, after you beat Tennessee, nothing really is out there that you can't overcome. With the game starting on Thursday, can Alabama really make a deep run out there?
I think they can. I think I said on your show before regionals that this team's shown this year that they could beat good teams once. They just hadn't been able to beat them twice until this past weekend. So the pitching can keep them in a game with any team in the country. And really, like, every team's beatable. We saw that last weekend. Texas, the number 1 seed, lost game 1 to A&M. And A&M was leading, I think, in both game 2 and game 3 and could have won that. Oklahoma, they made it through their super pretty easily against Florida State, but they've been gettable this year, which compared to how they've been the last 3 years, really the last almost decade, it's a big deal. It opens it up. It opens things up for the rest of the field. Like you said, they just beat number 3 Tennessee, and then Florida is number 4 that's here, and Alabama beat them once this regular season. And so, at this point, don't count anything out for this team. Would I say it's super likely that they make a deep run? Probably not. I would say that I have a lot more confidence in this team winning at least one game out here than I did last year's team, just with, last year Montana was obviously famously hurt right before, didn't pitch in regionals, came back to pitch in supers, pitched through the pain and did a phenomenal job in that. But she wasn't at 100%. And then that offense last year struggled all year, and they struggled in the postseason too. This offense this year has really struggled during the year, the last couple of weeks to figure things out, starting in regionals. And so it gives me more confidence in them being able to win a game out here than last year's team that just went 0-2 in Oklahoma City.
If you listen to the program 2 weeks ago, right before regionals, you heard Katie Windham say she thought 3 or 4 SEC teams would be out in Oklahoma City. Well, you look through the lineup, and there are 4 SEC teams. Okay, maybe not. There's 2, Alabama and Florida. All right, Texas and Oklahoma are incoming. So, Katie, you nailed that. Just the loaded SEC representation out there. You see Alabama's old friend Skylar Wallace with Florida. You've hit on Oklahoma and Texas. They're having a little bit of not drama. The Texas coach basically said, we need to think about moving the Women's College World Series away from Oklahoma City or rotating it around, basically insinuating that the Sooners have a bit of a home field advantage. What's your opinion on Oklahoma City as a site? As you said, you've been there 3 years in your experience already. What's your opinion of Oklahoma City as a host site, and is it an unfair advantage for Oklahoma State and Oklahoma?
I'll say this. It is a great site, and I think it is a little bit of an unfair advantage, but it also is what it is, which is kind of what Murph said today when he was asked about it. This is a great venue. It's a great event. If any fan likes college sports, especially if you like softball, I would recommend coming out here one year, whether if your team's in it or not, but especially if your team's in it, come out and experience this event. It's a great stadium. They've continually added on and made some upgrades to it, which in case anyone doesn't know, or if you've seen tweets or posts and are kind of confused, it's now called Devon Park, which I don't necessarily love the name change. It used to be USA softball, it used to be called Hall of Fame Stadium, which had a little bit better ring to it, in my opinion, than Devon Park. But it's a great venue. And the problem, which is what Murph talked about today, is there's just nothing comparable to it around the country. I would love if it was rotated and you had like kind of an East Coast site, whether like in Atlanta, somewhere. We saw Birmingham in the World Games host softball a couple of years ago in the Hoover Met, and that was great. The problem is that's not an actual softball field, but we saw that crowds will turn out for it in a place like that. And then you have somewhere on the West Coast, like in LA, because California is a big hotbed for softball too. So it would be great if it could rotate to different spots, because like I was talking about earlier, Oklahoma, the weather's always super temperamental here around this time of year. And every time I've come here, there's been weather delays that cause a lot of issues. And so, it'd be great if it could rotate. But for now, this is the only place that has a facility like this. Clearly, the demand is big enough for a stadium this size. So I think if you went somewhere else, it would just be a downgrade. And so, but I do think it's an advantage for Oklahoma that, they can go home and sleep in their own beds. Their fans don't have to book flights. They don't have to make last-minute plans because they can just drive here. A lot of them live here. This is the biggest city in the state, so I would assume this is where their largest fan base is, and Norman's only like 30 minutes from here. So, but it's a great venue for what it is, and so obviously, I don't think it's going to move anytime soon, and I don't think it should.
I don't want to go back to one more Patrick Murphy kind of compliment. He pulled basically one of his old hats, one of his cards that he usually hits very well, or he has hit very well in the Knoxville Regional. In the 14-inning game, he pinch hits Lauren Johnson, younger sister of Jenna Johnson, and she gets on base and ultimately scores the winning run. I think obviously the offensive criticism is absolutely fair. It's fair this year, and really probably over the last 3 years. But one thing that Murph has always really done well is, okay, when it's time to hit a button and hit a pinch hitter, he's just kind of uncanny in his ability to put the right hitter in and produce a positive result.
Yeah, really what sparked this whole offense to me this postseason has been Riley Valentine's pitch hit home run in regionals. Lauren Johnson got the whole rally started in game 2 in Knoxville, which Alabama won. And it's kind of a tradition with Murph that he gets that pinch hitter at just the right time. I think if you looked at like the percentage of that, it'd probably be about what batting average are. I think people just remember the good ones because there's plenty of times it doesn't work. And also in a 14-inning game, you're just, you're turning to anyone on the bench you can. You're hoping somebody gets a hit, but it was a huge moment for Lauren Johnson. And sometimes it is just that fresh set eyes from the bench that's been watching and someone that's going to get up there and have the confidence that they can get a hit. And today, I kind of wrote about this in the practice report, is we saw they kind of took their BP in 3 different groups. And the first group was it was both the Johnson sisters, Lauren Espin, Larissa Pruitt, and Callie Heavlin. And the second group was Riley Valentine, Kristen White, Bailey Dowling, Marley Giles, and Kinlika Halen. So I would assume that's going to kind of be the those who were kind of in contention for the starting lineup. Obviously, those have been the starters for most, well, not necessarily most of the year with Lauren Espin, but last weekend. And I think Larissa will probably still start in right field just because of her defensive ability, even though she did not hit well in the Knoxville Super Regional. But obviously, Lauren's kind of in the mix for that as well. And then the last group was kind of the reserves and KJ Haney and Emma Broadfoot, Abby Dukeshire, Kendall Clark, and Kat Grill. But that third group really was hitting more home runs than the first group and kind of was maybe, which it's BP off the coach, so it's not like what you're going to face in the game, but it's still, I think we could definitely see a little pinch hit magic in Oklahoma City this week.
All right, so you hit on Riley Valentine, and I'd like to just take a small microscope to her. I mean, you kind of educated me a little bit in our pre-show. On Saturday, she gets thrown out at second base, on a ball that maybe was 6 inches, maybe 2 feet away from being a home run. And all right, my immediate fan reaction was, how do you get thrown out at second base? What in the world? And they put the camera on her several times after in the dugout, and she looked like distraught. She looked, I thought, embarrassed per se. But every time since she's been to the plate after that, it's been good at bat, positive at bat, strong, not necessarily hits every single time, but really good approaches, and obviously the grand slam to open the first inning in game number 3. I just was impressed with her ability to, okay, I got a bad break, something didn't really go my way, and then to respond to it. Patrick Murphy basically said yesterday in the airport that she has had the best approach and plan in the dugout before her at-bats. What are you seeing about her growth and really, I guess, ability to, okay, put this behind me? I had a little bad break, even though, I mean, goodness gracious, it's 2 feet away from a home run. It could have been a great at bat. And then to come back the next day, I'm not going to let that, slow me down to get me into a little slump. I was just impressed with her.
Well, yeah, even in that game, because that game was so long, that game, that 14-inning game. I can't remember what inning it was she got thrown out, but she had in that 14th inning, she had the double, right? Because Lauren Johnson got on and then Riley hit a double. So even in that game, she kind of bounced back and then obviously had the grand slam in the last game. But yeah, it's really been ever since she had that pinch hit home run in the postseason, she's raised her batting average from 181 to 220, which, 220 is not great, but when it was 181, that's real good. So, she's been probably their most clutch hitter in the postseason right now. And that's sometimes all you need is to be hot, to be good at the right times. And she looked like it again today in BP. And so it can be the people you don't expect. Look, I would not have picked Riley Valentine to be the one to be having the clutches for them. Like I just said, she was hitting 181. That's not good in any level of softball or baseball to be hitting below 200. But, she's gotten the hits now when she needed to, and could be a really important piece for Alabama in these games in Oklahoma City.
All right, let's get Katie Windham out of here on this. She's had a very busy day, and I want you all to go to the Bama Central YouTube channel to see her coverage on practice. I want you to see her time at the press conference with Patrick Murphy, and make sure you're going to Bama Central to read the practice report and everything, all the coverage out there in Oklahoma City. Katie, what's the story that you're looking to, okay, this is what I want to tell, this is what I want to capture? I mean, if Alabama goes 2-0, what's the story? Or if they make a deep run, is there anything left on the table, any meat on the bone that you think, okay, people need to know this about Alabama softball team as they're on the biggest stage this year?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, even just today sitting in the press conference, your mind starts going in different directions of things that can be stories. I think, like I talked about earlier, this is a upperclassman heavy team, and so it's kind of how these seniors help them get here, and then I'm really the kind of behind the scenes of the pitching and Caleb Bieber, it's been well talked about this year that she grew up an Alabama fan. She was obviously at Central Arkansas before this. And this is a big moment for her to be able to bring Alabama to the Women's College World Series. And especially if she went through a surgery this year, kind of fighting that type of adversity, how she stayed mentally strong when she maybe wasn't getting the run support for a lot of the year. And, even if they go 0-2, just kind of looking at what this team did to get here and kind of how they grew from where they were, because I think how they ended the regular season, losing the series at Auburn and then losing, I'm sure, a really frustrating game in the SEC tournament to LSU in 14 innings. They easily could have lost in regionals, and the season could have just ended then, like 2 years ago. But here they are in Oklahoma City as the 14th seed, and so I think there's hopefully a lot of good stories to tell this week.
And to read those stories, you're going to be at BamaCentral.com. You're going to follow Katie Windham at Katie Windham _ on the Twitter machine. She's going to be tweeting all kinds of updates. Tomorrow, Alabama gets the College World Series started against UCLA at 11 a.m. We're going to be following Katie. We thank you so much for your time. I know it's been an already very busy day for you. Go get a good dinner. Go get a good meal out there in Oklahoma City. I saw your breakfast. It looked, oh my gosh, very good. 10 out of 10?
Yeah, we're off to a great start meal-wise in Oklahoma City. So,
thanks so much for your time, Katie. We'll catch up with you as soon as possible. We'll look forward to all your coverage.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
Absolutely. That's Katie Windham joining us, and we want to have a nice little spotlight on softball because, yes, the ladies have put together really a great story. I mean, the offensive struggles are well documented. The under 500 season in the SEC, well documented. You've been there, done that. You've watched them all year. But for them to put it together the last 2 weekends is absolutely, I think, is commendable and impressive. We'll see what they have left in the tank this weekend. Obviously, the pitching staff went hard in the paint, hard in the circle last weekend, and so we'll see what their arms look like tomorrow at 11 a.m. I think, you've had national championship pitching all year long, really. The quality has been there all year long. If they get a couple of runs, I think they're going to be a very dangerous out in Oklahoma City. A couple other things we're looking for today on BamaCentral.com. You're waiting for Jaron Stevenson and for Mark Sears. We hit out yesterday. Both those guys have NBA draft decisions to make. You got Mark Sears, who's wanting guaranteed money. He should want guaranteed money. And he's working out for the Milwaukee Bucks today. We've hit that. We kind of see the Milwaukee Bucks as a NBA fit for Mark Sears. Jaron Stevenson, I think, is way more 50-50 than we originally thought over the last couple of weeks. Why? Because of his youth, because of his really raw skill sets. You see his height, you see his athleticism, you see his ability to shoot the three, and the NBA is salivating over that. Now, will they go out and draft him? That remains to be seen. It is a weak draft. We've talked about that with our friend Matt Guzman last week from Inside the Spurs. It's a weak draft. Maybe that plays into Jaron Stevenson's draft stock. Maybe that adds to his draft stock because of his youth and because of the upside. So both those guys have until 10:59 Central Time, 11 o'clock Central Time. It's midnight on the East Coast. Both those guys have till 11 o'clock Central Time to announce whether they're coming back to Tuscaloosa for the 2024-25 season or if they're going to stay in the NBA draft and pursue professional opportunities. We'll have that coverage for you right there at BamaCentral.com, and I believe we'll have our friend Blake Byler on the show tomorrow after the softball game is done. We're going to watch the softball game kind of as a staff. Katie's going to be out there. Goodness gracious. Katie has been traveling her tail off for Alabama coverage. She traveled to the Rose Bowl. She traveled to L.A. for the Elite Eight. She traveled to Phoenix for the Final Four and is now in the College World Series in Oklahoma City. So please follow Katie Windham. She is, oh my gosh, a pro's pro as far as sports coverage. Katie Windham _ on the Twitter machine. She's all out there in Oklahoma City. We'll be following it right here on BamaCentral.com. I'll have maybe a small little piece. Blake will probably have a small little piece. But but Katie has all the meat. So we appreciate her shouldering the load for BamaCentral.com. We're going to follow the Mark Sears and Jaron Stevenson decision and hopefully catch up with Blake tomorrow about what this Alabama basketball roster will look like after their decisions. Does Nate Oates have to go fill one or two more positions from the transfer portal? Will he leave a scholarship open like he has in the past to kind of we'll see how that goes. He's left the scholarship open, I believe, each of the last two seasons. He filled it with Ty Spears last year, midway through the year, to reward the walk-on, and he filled it with Davin Cosby midway through the year 2 years ago. Maybe that is the route they go, or will he fill it in the transfer portal, or will he have the next couple of weeks off because Jaron Stevenson and Mark Sears have both decided to come back to Tuscaloosa for the 2024-25 season? That'll all be up in the air. We'll be covering it right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com and talking about it right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. We want to thank Katie again for her time. Very, very busy day. Traveling out there yesterday, landing, going right to work, all kinds of press conferences that you can see on the Bama Central YouTube channel. Open practice. She's got film of that on the Bama Central YouTube channel as well. And she's got a practice report writing all her observations right there on the front page already on the Bama Central YouTube channel, on the Bama Central front page right there on BamaCentral.com. We appreciate her time. We appreciate you the most. You followed us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. James Ludeman hit me up with a comment, and we showed it at the very beginning. He's absolutely right. The Patrick Murphy haters are awfully quiet right now. And so you can always chime in on the show on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Joe Gaither 6. We appreciate all the comments, questions, queries, and complaints. We appreciate everybody who subscribed, rated, reviewed the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. You know a friend that might like the show, send it to them and get them to try it out. We appreciate everybody who's been following the journey. We're just over a year on the program, and we're looking for ways to get better. We've taken all kinds of comments and criticisms to get better on our social medias. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.
Thanks for joining us on today's edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central. Keep up with Joe on all his social media pages at Joe Gaither 6. Subscribe, rate, and review the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and be sure to read us daily at BamaCentral.com.